Great. It looks like we have everybody at different levels, which is great. This is why we have a fantastic DEIA committee, because we're making sure that everything that we try to influence, making sure that we take that in consideration, that we're all on different paths and journey in diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. So thank you very much for taking that poll. Now I'll go ahead and move it over to Jessica.
Thanks, Teresa. Hi, everyone. I am Jessica Cunningham, the other co-chair of the DEIA committee. We're really excited to have you all here with us this evening to meet 4 members of the committee. We are going to spend a lot of time just getting to know them a little bit deeper, asking them some questions. So hopefully you have a better understanding of who these members are. We've sent out updates so far, or at least Sigma Kappa has, as far as the work that we've been doing and accomplishments thus far. So it's also posted on the website. We're going to direct you to that if you want to know more specifics into our work. This is going to be focused on the members this evening. So just wanted to put that out there. Like I said, I'm Jessica. I use the pronouns she and her. I am an initiate of our Epsilon Tau chapter at Cal State Fullerton University. And a fun fact about me is I have a goal to travel to all 7 continents throughout my lifetime. So that's something fun. Sucks that I can't be traveling right now, but I'm going to kick it over to our committee members that we'll be featuring this evening. So I'm going to start with Terry, Emma, Christina, Puja.
Okay. Hi, I'm Terry Sentner. My pronouns are she and her and hers. I was a Theta Lambda at MIT for 4 whole months before I graduated because I was in the first class. And my fun fact is, if you live in Oklahoma, you might have seen me on TV because the Chickasaw Nation did a 1-minute video about me for their Profiles of a Nation series. And so I will say Chukma Chikasha Saya, which means hello, I am Chickasaw.
Awesome. Hi, I'm Emma. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Kappa Iota at the University of Pennsylvania. I'll be graduating this year. I'm a senior. And my fun fact, I'll be honest, I always struggle with a fun fact, but I guess for a humanities and social sciences major, I'm actually very good at math. So that's my fun fact.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Parrell. I use she, they pronouns. I am an initiate of the Delta Eta chapter at the University of Central Missouri. And what was the last thing? Oh, my fun fact. I was the student body president at the University of Central Missouri when I was an undergrad. So that's it.
Hi, I'm Puja Shetty. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I was also a founding member of my chapter, Kappa Omega at Northeastern University, a little bit down the road from Terry's chapter. And my fun fact is that last summer, 2019, of course, I took a road trip from where I live in Austin, Texas, all the way to Portland, Oregon. So my partner and I drove and camped throughout Colorado, Utah, Idaho, and Oregon to get there.
That's great. Thank you for sharing those. Just a question, and Christina, if you can help us. We introduced ourselves, making sure that we include our pronouns as well. Can you please tell us the importance of pronouns and give members that are on the call some background information?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of times we tend to lean into the language of preferred pronouns. I think the current, probably most up-to-date language is just, what are your pronouns? They're not preferred, they just are. And so really pronouns, I think, are most important to be able to make sure you're representing someone in the way that they want to be represented, and who they are, and acknowledging that humanity and expression and identity of theirs. I use she, they, which I think for a lot of folks is like, I don't understand. Partially I use she, of course, because I was socialized to use she I was born and people started using she, right? Like that's just kind of what it was based on my sex assigned at birth. And so I don't want to lose that identity because I think it has shaped the way that I've seen the world for the majority of my life. I think, however, I recently, probably within the last year, have also started using they, because I've been misgendered a lot in my life because I have had short hair majority of my life. So I've been like, a lot of people, hey, sir, think I'm a man, whatever it may be. Although if you could see the lower half of my body, that would be confusing for you probably because I don't have a very masculine body at all. So I think that using they is just an easy way for folks not to misgender me or not to be confused by that. And I think that they is the most inclusive way to talk about folks that you're not sure. And so I use both just to create space for people to use either.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I encourage everybody, even though International Pronouns Day has passed, that you also start practicing that as well. I think a simple way to do that is to even add it to your email signature. I think everybody's on email now, so just a good little practice in that. So I guess I'll go ahead and start. Let's see. Puja, for somebody that is starting out, just wanting to learn more about diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, or DEIA. For somebody that's starting out, what would you recommend that person do?
Yeah, so if you were on last night's call, there was a somewhat similar answer, but kind of one of the first steps I did and that I advise others to do is look at the content you're consuming and who's creating it. So that does mean the books you're reading and the TV shows you're binging and movies you watch. It also means your social media feeds and your news sources. I thought I was doing a pretty okay job at all of that, and then I realized not so much, and so I made a concerted effort. It's a good tangible thing you can do to get started, and just adding things to my Instagram feed, for example, was a good way of normalizing things, just bringing it into my everyday life as I went. Some TV shows I'll recommend: Never Have I Ever on Netflix, got renewed for a second season, and they start filming soon. So that's from Mindy Kaling, the writer for The Office and The Mindy Project. So it's a great show. Even my 71-year-old dad likes it. So.
Right on. Great. Yeah, make it a family affair. That's awesome. How about you, Emma? Is there anything that you suggest if somebody's getting started in this, or maybe a book or podcast? Anything that you'd also want to throw in there?
Yeah, for sure. Going off what Puja said, I think then once you start incorporating maybe those new things into, your everyday feed on social media, especially, with the time we're in now where you're not always engaging with things in person, you can see it online, and, definitely taking the time to delve into those things that maybe you either don't agree with or have never heard of before. You know, reading through an article and then seeing what types of articles are linked with that one, and going off of those things just to go deeper and deeper. I think that's definitely like what I've always done is like just read, and try to get as much information as you can, to be informed about all different perspectives. And I think, from my perspective as a college student right now, we're all over Instagram and we're all looking for, short bite-sized pieces of information. And I know I recently followed the so you want to talk about on Instagram, which gives really small boiled down bits of information about different topics and gives you the source for that information if you want to read more about it. So I think for myself and for people I know, it's been helpful as a starting point.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. So, as we think about DEIA work and as we just all took this poll to just assess our comfortability, we're all at different levels. and we continue to learn as we go. So my question is, what really inspired you to get involved with DEIA work with Sigma Kappa, or if you've started before then, your initial start? So Terry, I'm going to kick this over to you. What really inspired you to get involved, or what in your life experience has kind of brought you here?
So I've had a few different things throughout my life. My first one was when I was a kid, like 7th and 8th grade, I think, maybe even before that. My mother got a job with Easter Seals, and they are a charity that works with handicapped people. And so she took me to my first race where there were real wheelchair racers. And I had no idea that people in wheelchairs wanted to do 5Ks and half marathons and things like that. That was so eye-opening for me. And then right after that, they did a program where they asked legislators in Utah, where we lived at the time, to spend the day in a wheelchair to see how hard it was for them to get around. And that was kind of my first foray into accessibility. Even though it was hers, she used to talk about it at night, at the dinner table and stuff. And it had never occurred to me how hard it would be for somebody in a wheelchair to get around. And so that was kind of my first introduction to accessibility. And then I guess probably I didn't have my next eye-opening moment until college. I was in Air Force ROTC, and I also went to a hard school, so we stayed up late and did all-nighters quite often. And this may surprise you, but not everyone had a computer in their room back then. So we actually had to traipse into campus to go to the computer room where all the computers lived. And so we would be there at like 2 and 3 in the morning. And my friend Gary Robinson was stopped on his way home more often than all the rest of us combined. And he was Black. And it never occurred to me that this would be an issue, but it was. And I realized recently this summer when we had a Black Lives Matter online vigil at MIT, it's still a problem, and we haven't gotten any better. And I graduated 30 years ago. So that was another thing that has stuck with me. And then I was a tutor for a Minority Introduction to Engineering and MITES, Engineering and Science program during college. And that was kind of the first time I was like a professional, because I was a paid tutor in DEIA. And it's been a passion on and off ever since, even though it's never been my actual job.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Terry. Christina, same question to you. What has kind of inspired you to get involved in this work? And, what in your lifetime has kind of brought you here?
Hey, this is a hard question to put into like the 60 seconds that I think you want me to say it in. But for those of you who I don't know, I identify as Black biracial. So I think that being biracial is one of the most intense social identities there is, to be able to navigate the world in two separate spaces and two different lives, and experience the world that way, especially when one of your parents is white and you don't appear to also be white. So I think innately, this was always a conversation, right? I remember as a little kid putting my hand on the top of my mom's hand and saying, Black, white, right? Or I remember being a little kid and me and my aunt, who is white, we were in a space and everybody was Black. And I whispered and I said, Julie, we're the only white people in here. Because again, everybody in my family was white, so I didn't really understand, right? And so my mother married my stepfather, who's an immigrant to this country. He's half St. Lucian, half Trinidadian, but he is an immigrant. And so he acts like an immigrant. And so the pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality was very much how I grew up. And then I got to college and was at a predominantly white school. It probably wasn't until racism and things like that were like an anomaly for me for the majority of my life. And I actually experienced like some significant racism growing up that now I acknowledge, but then don't think I really did. And then it wasn't until my senior year of college when I was going to be the president of the student body. I almost said of the United States. Wow, I really elevated myself quickly there. President of the student body. Listen, it could be fun, could get weird. There was a Black family who came up to myself and another Black colleague of mine and said, "Where are the people who look like us?" And I think in that moment, I had to be like, wow, what does that mean? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for them? And so I spent the majority of my senior year of college advocating for National Panhellenic Council, which is the historically Black fraternities and sororities on my campus, and bringing them along in spaces and places with administration that I was able to show and demonstrate the significant inefficient support that they were getting from the university. So I think that was really my introduction. But I also went into higher education with an emphasis in student affairs, which is basically a degree in emotion. So then that's how you got me today. So yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Christina. Actually, I'd like to ask the same question to Puja and Emma. What got you to on this path for DEIA and wanting to get involved with the committee?
I can go first. So DEIA in general, I've tried to figure out where it really started. And the other day I asked my dad why he cares so much about American politics, considering he moved here in the 80s, but didn't become a citizen until 2004, I think. And so I asked him like, what's the reasoning behind that? And he's like, I was just into it back in India, so I'm into it here. And I forgot that in India, youth are really encouraged to be civically and politically engaged. And so he just carried that over here. And I grew up watching the news with him and having political conversations with him. And my sister even is in charge of DEI for the last 4 companies she's worked at. She's started it and then been in charge of it at every company. So startup life. So I think it's just how we were raised. And then Sigma Kappa specifically was a little funny because I didn't hold an officer position in college, and I haven't been able to really get involved as an alum for various reasons. But I was writing a several paragraph email in June about all the things that Sigma Kappa could be doing to like not just be in this moment of change, but to really like make change. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm writing a lot, and just like saying like, do it, like good luck from the person that doesn't pay dues and isn't part of a chapter. And like, yeah, you should change so that I can be proud of you, but I'm not going to do anything, actually, just tell you what to do. And so I was like, I'll just apply. Like, what does it hurt? And then I actually got it. And it's been a really great experience. So I'm really happy to be part of this committee. So.
Yeah, so for me, I think there were definitely, aspects of my upbringing and aspects of my background. My father is an immigrant from Paraguay that have definitely, impacted why I'm interested in this. But I think the academic and kind of career interest in DEIA didn't really start until I was in college. And I came to college thinking I was going to major in hard sciences or math, physics, chemistry, something of that nature. And I took a small freshman class called Social Inequality and Health. And it was the first time that all of these, issues that we see in day-to-day life of racism and discrimination of other forms, taking a really tangible form and having that real impact on health and medicine in everyday life. And so taking that class, we read lots of different types of literature, learned about all sorts of different ways that there are inequities and the fact that these things don't have to be that way and that they can change. And so going forward from that point, I kind of like rerouted my college career and decided I didn't really have that passion for hard sciences. I had more of a passion for social sciences, which led me to my major now, which is called health and societies. And all of that has kind of just shaped the other things that I'm involved with. So I do research. I'm a research assistant as it pertains to some of these issues. I am a coordinator for a program that works with students in West Philadelphia. So I think those things have just kind of come together to get me to this point. And then specifically to Sigma Kappa, I think I'm the chapter president right now for Kappa Iota, and I think my chapter members have really inspired me in the way that I've seen them be activists in everyday life, and the things that we do as a whole just made me think, I'd be really remiss if I didn't apply to try to get involved with this committee and try to push, their interests even more in this organization, similar to Puja, like seeing places where, okay, we could definitely do this better, but who's going to make it happen? So I think they've really inspired me to want to do this work as well.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Emma. Appreciate it. So, as we dive into this work and continue to make changes, not only in Sigma Kappa, but our communities and, the world around us, what are some common misconceptions that you feel like you've heard or that people have related to DEIA work, identities, anything related to the topic? And so it's kind of a two-prong. How can we combat these misconceptions or communicate more effectively or work to bridge the gap? So first question, what are some common misconceptions that people have or that you've heard? And then how do we combat some of those misconceptions and work to communicate more effectively? So Terry, I'm going to kick this over to you first.
This wasn't on the list, was it?
It wasn't. I'm sorry. And if you're not prepared to answer, that's okay. We can pop it over to someone else if you need more time.
I'm trying to think common misconceptions. Well, one that comes up around Indigenous Peoples Day, which we just had, that gets really old, is people talking about Native culture as a past tense thing. And we end up having a tendency to say, we're still here, we're still vibrant, and then another thing is, because I went to MIT and we have an Indigenous alumni group, Natives in science is not really what they expect us to be in art. For what, like, everybody thinks of art when they think of American Indians, Native Americans, I go either way. But, we do all the things. And our culture is not dead. That's the two big misconceptions that I would like to go away at some point. And the only way I know to combat them is to have the conversations and to put ourselves out there and just help people learn. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Really, really good thoughts there. So I'm not going to choose anyone. If anyone would like to add in on this question, come off mute, feel free to. If not, Teresa will have another question.
Yeah, I'm happy to go. The only thing we didn't talk about this. I'm a speaker and consultant on equity, inclusion, and diversity. And so the three things that I tend to focus on are everybody thinks that you have to be like a social justice warrior or woke to do DEIA work. And really, you just need to care about people and their ability to navigate this world as the most privileged of us do. The second thing that I would say is everybody thinks this work really focuses around the D, which is diversity. And the truth is you're never going to, what I say is obtain, maintain, and retain diversity if you don't focus on equity, inclusion, and access first. And then my third one is the conversation around, this is all just so political, right? This conversation that folks want to politicize the conversation. And so what I have been virtually traveling the country, I guess, trying to teach people is that the conversation is political because we've politicized it, right? We've made it political in order to control and maintain power structures around the most oppressed or marginalized of us, right? So it's not surprising that voting is on the topic of politics every time. It's not surprising that female reproductive systems are a topic of conversation. It's not surprising that marriage is on the docket for conversation because it's a way to oppress people, particularly, those of us who are most vulnerable and marginalized. So those are my three things. And I think hopefully I've given ways to kind of deconstruct some of those as well.
I'll give it a shot. I'm not as eloquent as Christina. She's literally a speaker. So that's not a hit on me. That's a hire her. So I would say that there's a common misconception that DEIA work is about making anybody better than anybody else, and it's just not. And equality used to be the topic growing up for me, but now it's more about equity and giving people what they need to be at to have the same chances and opportunities as those of us that already have those privileges. I think there is this really common misconception that there's a limited amount of joy in the world, essentially, that there's only so many of us that are allowed to live out our dreams. And if that person gets a chance at it, then I don't get to have that. If they get a promotion, that means that's one less promotion I can get, or something like that. And that's not true. And we need to stop thinking of things in such a, in Brene Brown's words, I'm a Brene Brown stan, scarcity. We just think everything is so scarce, and it leads to pushing people down so that we have enough resources when we really need to be lifting each other up, because there's no scarcity. It's all abundant and it's all there if we all just help each other out.
How about you, Emma?
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about it. I think two things that jumped out to me were, I think, for example, for myself, the place where I started with thinking about this work was like, okay, there's oppression and there's discrimination, and that's causing inequities, and we should address that. But there's also maybe the flip side of recognizing the things that give privilege as the opposite of oppression, and that it can be uncomfortable sometimes to sit with the idea that you have certain privileges in life, but that's kind of a necessary part of recognizing why oppressive systems exist, is because it's maybe meant to put other people on a pedestal. So I don't know if that's so much a misconception as it is just like an added layer of something to think about once you recognize the oppression and discrimination. But I think, to address that type of thing, it's just kind of about reading about that type of thing, reading about like what is privilege and why someone might have that, and how you can, use your place of privilege to do something good. So I think that was one thing. And I think another thing was believing, another misconception might be that like believing inequities are something like intrinsic and fixed about a certain group, and framing it as, okay, well, this group is facing this type of problem, instead of framing it in terms of, I'll give a more concrete example. I realize I'm going a little bit off, but thinking, okay, women are this way because of something about women, instead of thinking, okay, this exists because of sexism. So I think you can put that into lots of different domains of identity. You could say, okay, maybe LGBTQ plus persons are this way, or you could say this is because of homophobia, or this is because of transphobia, that these attitudes are persisting and these outcomes are happening maybe socially. So again, I think that might be something that just requires more education about where the root of a problem is, rather than it being intrinsic in a group of people, but actually it being something social.
Great, thank you. So for those of you that are on the call or Zoom, present, I guess, your DEIA committee members we've been together for about 2 months now. We are, really starting to get in the swing of things, and trying to influence as much as we can. So some of the work that we're doing is creating relationships with DEIA creative teams as well as staff. And we have our committee members that are working in conjunction with them, and again, trying to influence and create impact. So this is a question for everybody. Terry, Christina, Puja, Emma, it doesn't have to be in that order. But working with their creative team or staff, or actually just in general with this committee, what is one piece of, like, what is one goal you would like to accomplish, or what kind of impact do you want to make for Sigma Kappa?
I'll go first. My goal, because I think DEIA work is truly a slow incremental process if you're doing it correctly. So I'm definitely not trying to solve 150 years of what have you in just a few months. But what I really want is for Sigma Kappa to have a foundation to become the leader in the Panhellenic Council on how to move forward in DEIA and how to have that in every aspect of who we are as an organization.
Okay, so I think Sigma Kappa has a majority of the chapters that I have worked with. So I didn't mention, but I've been volunteering for about 6 years. So I, most of the chapters that I work with identify as not cookie cutter chapters, right? Like I think that's Sigma Kappa's thing. We're not cookie cutter. And I would like to see Sigma Kappa lean into that. And I would like for them to find their lane and stay in it, right? I think part of not being cookie cutter is diversity, equity, and inclusion and access, right? Is leaning into that work and realizing that I teach on the fact that DEIA is directly tied to authenticity, and authenticity is directly tied to not being cookie cutter. And so really embracing this work, both through that lens, but then also through our lens of being an organization that is focused in loyalty and personal growth. I think that we have to commit to what we say we value, and DEIA is directly tied to all three of those things. And so I want to, like I said, I want us to find our lane. I want us to stay in it, and I want us to not let others determine where we're going to go, and just be like who we are, regardless of what some internally or externally think.
It's so hard to follow, Christina. So my chapter was pretty diverse, even in 1989. But I've always struggled to see the diversity that I know we have on our social, well, we didn't have social media back then, but on our website when we finally had a website, and on our social media now. And so to what Christina was saying, to show that we're not cookie cutter so that people know instead of just telling ourselves that we're not. And to become known for that, or just, it's not even a question. It's just, the default. And so I have this passion project that I hope to make happen during my time on the committee, which is to have a video of Sigma Kappas all over the world saying hello or sister or some word in every language that we speak throughout the sorority. So that's, if I can make that happen, I will have won.
I think I'm really interested in seeing more equitable and inclusive recruitment practices. And I think that kind of goes with the idea of like not being cookie cutter and having women members from all different backgrounds represented in our organization. And someone mentioned this already also, like being a leader in our council and showing what is a good recruitment practice and what is not. And I think all of that overall, the more lofty goal that hangs over all of that is breaking down some of the exclusivity culture that exists surrounding Greek life, because Greek life can be, and Sigma Kappa can be, a really great place for people, but not if we aren't starting with that recruitment step, which is where you get people to see the value in this organization and see that it can be a place where they feel accepted and they feel that they belong and they feel like they're uplifted in all parts of their identity. So
awesome. Thanks for sharing. It's nice to hear and see how the work that you all are doing coincides with all of that you guys have said thus far, and how your passion just comes into the committee. So that was also really rewarding for me to hear. My next question for you all is, as people may get started in this work, we talked about what they do to get started, or, the fact that we're all at different levels. What encouragement would you offer someone doing DEIA work when they face challenges or they want to give up? so they don't give up, so they continue to kind of be engaged and take action steps and make it an active thing in their lives. What encouragement would you all offer to someone who's maybe facing a challenge they haven't been met with before, or, you know, maybe feeling discouraged?
You didn't say names, so I'll jump in. So are we talking about anybody, or are we talking about our DEIA chairwomen and advisors?
Anyone that you want to apply this to.
Okay, so we're working on guidance and resources for all those people. They're not finished yet. So what we've done in the meantime is create a Facebook group for DEIA chairs and advisors. And if anybody contacts me or anybody on the committee, really, we can give you the link for that. And that's a great place to go. Right now, there's only, I think, 20 of us maybe, but it will grow. And it's a great place to go and say, I have no idea what to do, or I don't want to give up, give me some encouragement or whatever. And that's a great place that you can go to recharge your batteries and talk to your sisters who are going through the same thing probably.
I can take a stab at it. When you ask this, the first thing that comes to mind is the discouragement one can feel when you kind of get caught in not being the biggest social justice warrior. And we all experience that. That is not, like, if you ever feel uncomfortable when doing DEIA work, that is a huge part of doing the work. And I think that we have a lot of shame attached to what comes up when you do this work. And what that can look like is we take it really personally when somebody calls us out on not being the best allies or what have you. And it's not personal, it's literally systemic. It's literally just like everybody all the time, constantly. And so my first piece of advice is to take a breath and to take a step away. You know, if you're in a hostile situation, remove yourself from it. And that way you can just take a moment to think, am I feeling defensive because I'm actually being attacked? Or am I feeling defensive because everything I've known my whole life is changing before my eyes? Because that has happened to me. And it's not a fun feeling. It doesn't feel good. And anyone who does this work knows that feeling and knows that that's not a particularly rejuvenating feeling. But you can get through it if you are willing to stick with it. And it's really worth it to stick with it.
This is a hard question. I mean, because I think it depends on how you're doing the work, right? Like it depends on, are you just doing the work like in your everyday life? Are you like teaching some things? I think it would kind of depend, but I think taking breaks, and I don't mean, I mean literally like finding time to unwind, not talk about it, decide when to engage, decide when not to engage. Or just engage lightly. So I will give you an example. Like on Facebook, I'm not an engager because listen, y'all, I'm not going to fight with folks on the social medias, but I do like to leave a quick no, or this is an unfortunate status, or no, right? Like I just leave little quick notes so they know this isn't okay. So like not feeling like you have to fully engage. I think the second thing is to find your own allies. And I don't mean like allyship, like we talk about. I mean, like find your people that you can call. So like Jessica, in a lot of ways in regards to Sigma Kappa, is that person for me, where I will call and be like, yeah, this isn't working for me. The way this is going or the way this is working is very much making me upset. And so like finding somebody to talk through that with, I think is really important. And to be able to process or to be able to just put your thoughts and feelings in a space, whether that's with another human or in an email or just write it down or whatever that looks like. I I think that that's really important. I will also say, I'm a responder, like immediately. Like if I get an email, I'm going to respond, or if like I get a text, I'm going to respond. And I think taking a lot of time to wait can be good. Like, and I don't mean like 30 minutes. I mean like, okay, in a week, I'll get back to you. So like really see how you feel a week from then, right? If you're still like, God, that still makes me really mad, then maybe you kind of approach it, you know, like in a more effective manner. But if maybe a week from now you're like, oh, I'm over it, then to realize that maybe you were coming from a more emotional space than, you know, would have been productive for that particular situation.
I think when you asked this question, what first came to mind was similar to what Puja said. And I'm thinking kind of when you're first starting out doing this type of work, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, because otherwise you won't get started. And, you know, obviously similar to what Puja said, right? Like there's shame surrounded with so many things, and there's so much shame in making a mistake or doing something slightly wrong. But you have to do things with good intentions, and then you have to accept whatever feedback comes from it and try to grow from it, because that's the only way to get started. It's probably never going to be perfect, quite frankly, because as Puja said, like there are so many systemic problems and there's so much in the air that's going to cloud the way you do anything, that don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Just get started.
Thank you, everyone. We have 15 more minutes. We'd like to open up questions from those of you that have joined us. So please feel free to either write it in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question.
And you can ask anything. We will do our best to answer. If we don't have an answer, we'll do the best that we can. So don't feel like there's something that you can't ask.
And you can type it if you don't want to say it. Somebody did that yesterday and it was fine.
I guess I'll go first. Also, I'm Tanya. I'm in the Alpha Phi chapter of the University of Oregon, and I am also the diversity inclusion chairwoman for our chapter. So yay. I guess like a question I have, I'm not really sure because my ABS is our advisor. If you guys have any plans of like having advisors for like each district and stuff, because I definitely feel, I mean, I heard that you guys said that you guys are in the works of like providing more resources for us. But there's moments where my ABS isn't enough resources. Like she isn't, I don't know if I'm wording that correctly, but like I need more guidance with like whether it's specific things or overall situations. I know like during the end of our spring quarter and like summer with the Black Lives Matter movement, I definitely was very lost on where or how I can educate my chapter. And it was more of a, I have to really do my own research before even like saying anything. So I was definitely lost with that. So I don't know, do you guys like plan on having advisors for like districts and stuff, or do you guys already do that? And like, is there someone I can contact for like more information that like, yeah, that's my question.
I'll say first, we'll get you in the Facebook group, because if nothing else, you can ask in there and hope if somebody doesn't know, we can go back to national headquarters and ask, or we can discuss it amongst the committee and get back to you or whatever. But right now, and you can always email info@Sigma Kappa. Do we have like a diversity@sigmakappa.org address or something like that too? Or DEIA?
Inclusion.
Inclusion@sigmakappa.org is always a good one as well. Thank you.
But I think, Tanya, to be quite honest, no, there is not a structure. Should there be? Yes. Is that something we can advocate for? Yes. I think here's the rub, right? Is that we have to get the appropriate folks educated on the topic to be able to even support that structure. So although I appreciate, what you're saying, I don't even know that we have the appropriate structure right now to be able to create that and make it sustainable. So I think although yes, you would like, of course, a more immediate solution, which Terry, I think, is kind of offering one, at least at the Facebook group, long standing, I think there's a little bit more work that we need to do at the leadership level in order to be able to support that. And I appreciate the question, because I think it's important for people to hear that, especially from a college student as yourself and somebody who's in the role and knowing that there isn't enough support for the role. So we appreciate it, and we appreciate you being here. Hopefully some of what we've shared tonight has also been helpful to you, but Terry will definitely help get you in that Facebook group, and that'll be a start, hopefully.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And actually, you know that Puja also is a liaison as well for DEIA advisors, and are working on that relationship, to speak more to what Christina was bringing up. So Puja, anything, like, obviously, again, this is definitely long term, but is there anything right now that you'd like to share with Tanya or any of the other DEIA advisors or chairwomen that may be on the call right now?
Yeah, so headquarters is acutely aware that there have not been a lot of resources for the position. They didn't let perfect be the enemy of good. They've got this chair out there, but they're aware that there weren't a lot of resources. So we're currently working on being a little clearer about what is your role, what are you responsible for, what are ways that you could be working with other officers so that you don't have an advisor, but the other officer might have an advisor, and then you can kind of rely on them in that way. And then just terminology, what are the basic concepts of certain things. And then, there's only one workshop right now. So I think in the near future, we're going to be working on more workshops, and we're working on the process on how, if you want a speaker to come to your chapter, what could that look like? Or you present it. Maybe we have some presentations, and how do you get trained up on doing that? And then kind of not DEIA specific, but as an alum that wasn't an officer, wasn't a chair, haven't been particularly engaged as an alumna in an official capacity, just more like a chill social way, I was completely unaware that I could remotely volunteer for officers and chairs. And so kind of started talking to the staff member I'm a liaison to about, is there ways we could be better communicating to alumni that there are opportunities for maybe people like me who are a few years out of college now, and we actually feel like we have capacity to volunteer. So I, similar to Terry, have a bit of a passion project there that I'm hoping that we can get a little more alumni engagement. Like, what does it actually look like to be an advisor? How time consuming is it? What do you all need? So yeah, hope that helps a little bit.
I think there was also a question in the chat that said, what is the roadmap to educate our membership on DEIA, specifically the alumni base? I think this is a fascinating question. I don't think there's specifically a roadmap. I think people know that alumni need the education. The hard part, and this would be for any organization, right, is that our access to alumni is different than it is for current, collegians or current volunteers, whether it's at the highest level of leadership or a general, PR chair, advisor. So I think the alumni piece is more so it would be opt-in. I don't know that the organization could say we're going to require, you to engage in that kind of education. Although I think things should be open to alum, in a lot of ways, I do think prioritizing our leadership is wildly important, because hopefully if we start there, some of that will bleed through the rest of the organization, and we can actually, again, kind of get on the same page about who is Sigma Kappa, why does this matter to us? And so I think this is a more long-term goal, and I think that we have to start figuring out how to manage like the alumni Facebook page and those kinds of things, while also trying to offer educational opportunities that alumni can be a part of.
Well, I have a question for Emma. How are you balancing being on the committee as well as college? What does that balancing look like for you?
Yeah, I think this semester has been very interesting. I think I knew that this would certainly be an added responsibility, and I think I am already doing a lot, but when something is like important to you, you make time. I think it has given me some new perspective as I, finish out my like term being on executive council with my chapter and transition into like, where I thought maybe I would just be a second semester senior relaxing and, hanging out with my chapter. Now it's more like, okay, like how am I going to stay engaged with this further, because I have made this commitment to it. I think this past week has been very difficult. I don't if I'm because I'm in Philadelphia, I'm not sure how much of like national news this is, but a young Black man was killed in West Philadelphia, Walter Wallace Jr. on Monday, and that has had such a profound impact on this community. And I think, in this week alone, just thinking about why do I want to be on this committee and what am I contributing to my community and my society as a whole with my existence, with my work in DEIA, with my academic and career goals as a student. I think it's been really interesting. And honestly, this week I've been at a loss for words about a lot of different things, but I know that in the end I'll be better for it. And I definitely would encourage anybody else who's a collegian who wonders if they should be getting involved with things that are bigger and outside their chapter. I think it's definitely worthwhile, and I would recommend it to somebody else. I hope that makes sense. I know it might have been a little bit of all over the place.
Hi, this is Jen Homan, and I represent Sigma Kappa as I always forget my internal title, Director of Panhellenic Management. Yes. And I was curious, well, first of all, I want to thank you all, everyone on the committee, for all the work that you are doing. We will be so much better off for it. And I know it is just a huge gift that you're giving Sigma Kappa, so thank you. I was curious if anyone reached out to you about the Abolish Greek Life movement to kind of get your take on it. And if not, I want to. And I don't need for you to solve for it, but just curious about this wave that fortunately so far our chapters, we've had one chapter that had serious, but there's closures of many sorority chapters throughout the US on certain campuses, not Sigma Kappa, but it's not kind of a question.
So I don't think the committee specifically received outreach about it. Okay, good. Trust and Jessica like no, so I want to make sure maybe you all didn't. But no, we didn't as a committee. And Jen, just really quickly, because I know I take up a lot of space, but I'm also okay with that. I work for Zeta Beta Tau fraternity headquarters, which is a historically Jewish fraternity. So we got hit by Abolish Greek Life pretty heavily in a lot of ways, not as much as others, I will say. I think that we as an industry thought it was going to pass, and now we are into the school year and it hasn't. And I guarantee we will continue to see a resurgence of it. And I think until we as an industry can decide what we want to do, it's going to continue to be a problem. And what I mean by that is literally, on the campuses in which we are seeing chapters closed, a lot of those international, national organizations plan to refill those chapters. They're just going to let the people that currently are in them walk away or quit, and then they're going to refill the chapters. And I think a lot of our young folks believe that if they walk away, something is going to change. And they clearly don't know fraternity and sorority well, because it will maintain exactly what it is if nobody challenges and pushes it. I'm not saying that systems can't be changed from the outside. I don't know that this is one of them, though. Because, you know, we talk about like when you're on the outside, it doesn't make sense, but when you're on the inside, it's like this beautiful cutesy thing, right? And so I think there's some level of needing to be on the inside in order to fully understand how to dismantle some of our issues. So I think it might take a lot of change in leadership amongst our governing structures like NPC, but also within our organizations, to be quite honest, to be willing and able to engage in a conversation that isn't just focused on the undergraduate students. Like I said, I am a speaker and a consultant, and I work with a lot of international, national organizations. And so many of them are like, I ask them, why does this matter to your organization? And I always say, and it can't be because your collegiates care about it. Like, why else do you care about this conversation? Because it's got to be bigger than that, or we are going to fail every time. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
If I can add my 2 cents as well. So yeah, we don't have an official committee perspective. So this is just me talking as an individual, but I would say that I understand where the Abolish Greek Life movement comes from. So I am not outwardly critical of it. I don't make a point to address it generally. And Christina and I actually spoke recently about reforming from the inside, and she made a great point that it's great that you didn't bring it up, so now I get to make it, is that fraternities and sororities present really incredible opportunities for growth. I mean, Tanya had to deal with how to educate an entire chapter about the Black Lives Matter. I don't know how many adults that are like on their 3rd job could do that, and we're asking collegiates to do it, and then they're doing it. They're having recruitment. Kat is from my sorority family, and I know that they just had a great virtual recruitment during COVID. Like, they know how to do all these things. Those are incredible skills to have, and the outside world doesn't always fully appreciate the outside world. Sorry, but you know, there's so many levels of outside when I say that. People who aren't in Greek life don't understand what those translations are, and I helped get someone hired one time because she was a Kappa Delta, and I was like, well, she was actually in charge of recruitment at her chapter, and we're hiring as a recruitment coordinator. She'd be great. And they're like, oh, it's just Greek life. What does that matter? And I was like, do you know how intense sorority formal recruitment is? Then I broke it down, and I tore that man down and explained it to him, and once she got the job. So I like to think that I played a part in that. I think that there are such incredible experiences. And as I've said like 3 times already, wasn't an officer, wasn't a chair, still had great growth experiences by being in this sorority. Kat, you're a senior, yeah, right? Yeah, so we've got a big age gap, but I get to like still interact with somebody much younger than me and get this connection that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for Sigma Kappa. So I don't know. It's just, no one's confronted me from the Abolish Greek Life movement, but I just think this is a system worth trying to save and trying to reform, but we have to want to reform it, or we're not going to survive.
Awesome. Thanks for adding that in. And thanks for all your questions. Thank you everyone for coming and spending the last hour with us. I hope that you truly enjoyed it. We have one last poll question for you before we log off for the evening. So if you'll just take a couple minutes to answer that, and you won't see the results or anything like that, and you're just free to enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you so much.